hi, this podcast we do just off our own back. We're spending billable hours on it. You know, we could be doing something else, but we like doing the podcast. It is a slightly cheaper version of therapy for both of us. But we hear that some people get something out of it. For example, you got a message today.
I did. Sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm just running with it, just like trying something.
So I got a message from Nick, who I used to work with. He says, oi, oi, hellos. A quick note of thankage for the Coronavirus Capitalism podcast. I enjoy the semi-structured ramblings muchly. Hope all is good with you. Love and light. And I think
there we go.
It's just nice to get it. And which reminds me that I haven't also replied to him and gone, thank you.
You need an admin product that I'm working on. Okay, so like we do it, people seem to like it as well, and there's some music in there. But we're just going to remind you that if you're not subscribed, you can go to grandpodcast.com and subscribe. There's a button there. You can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/grandpodcast, or you can support our enterprises.
Yes.
So just come and find. I've got a new mailing list for if you want to get into like happiness tracking and all my organisational things. The podcast is an end in itself, but also it does take time. So if you do want to help, that would be great. Hello and welcome to Michael and Ivanka's Grand Podcast, a weekly podcast where we talk about the coronavirus every week for the foreseeable future. Ivanka's in Croatia and I'm in London. My name's Michael Forrest.
And I'm Ivanka Magic.
This week we're going to talk about human rights. They seem to be used by idiots as some sort of they seem to misunderstand what human rights are when they go and protest and out in front of a big public space and go into parks and have big parties in the midst of a pandemic because it's their human right. And we haven't talked about human rights before, so
no, we
should
it's odd that. I mean, I think we think about it occasionally anyway. Guns got me thinking about human rights. I was listening to, as revealed on previous episodes, I've now got back into listening to podcasts. I've carved out my podcast listening time. So I'm listening to a bit of Team Human and guns came up, which made me think about guns again. Which, so there's all these things I think that we get confused as individuals. The difference between what we'd like to do and what is a right.
Yes.
or to quote somebody recently, it goes, yes, but that's fun. And fun is a childish thing that you have to grow out of. Just because something's fun doesn't mean you can do it.
Okay.
Anyway,
I'll probably jump into the Amnesty International definition if they've got one. But yeah, let's go in there, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it.
How's it going?
How's
your week been?
My week has been good, I'd say. I have, as I've said, been doing some running, which always makes me feel good. I found a new little route, so a nice 6K. I do like to run in a loop. I don't like a dog leg.
A dog leg?
And you go down, and you turn around, and then you come back. I don't like that. So
I've been dog legging recently on my runs. So I'm trying to keep them under control because I know when I'm halfway exactly. If I do as you say, dog leg and then come back. My knee's a bit dodgy, so I'm trying to be careful with it. But yeah.
Well, I found a new loop. Which I can do, which is because I run away from the sea up, so there's a lot of uphill, then there's lots of downhill uphill. So I've got this new sort of 6K-ish loop where, depending which way, I can run it clockwise or anti-clockwise, which affects my speed because I've got a choice of going up the really steep hill slowly or walking down it very gingerly in the fear of loose stones tripping me up.
Yeah.
So, but I'm enjoying that, and I have also been considering how much alcohol I've been consuming during lockdown.
Oh dear!
So I didn't drink last night for the first time in ages. I'm sitting there getting sozzled, but
Yeah, well, I think it's a bad time to be a drinker because we don't drink at all. Really. No, we haven't. We made some mushroom sauce with some. We did buy a little tiny bottle of white wine for cooking with, and we've been cooking with white wine and mushrooms.
You've had white wine in mushroom sauce?
Yes. Hopefully the alcohol was boiled off, but I certainly appreciate not having hangovers during this time because I don't think that would help.
Well, I don't drink to hangover.
Yeah, I know, but there's a mild, little fuzziness that you sort of get used to, I think, with regular drinking.
We'll see how I get on with that. Yeah. Anyway, that's one of my little things I've been thinking about. But it is fun being a little bit tipsy, so...
So they say.
Drink responsibly, people. Anyway.
Sometimes I think I could do with being out of my head a little bit more because it sort of breaks up the repetition a bit, doesn't it? If you sort of throw in these spikes. But, I've chosen my course. Okay, it's fine.
There you go. That's been my... In terms of other highlights, lowlights, we had rain for a day for the first time since Christmas-ish. We're having the drought version of climate change. And we're building the child a treehouse in the garden. That's today's project. So, yes, there you go.
How high up?
Well, that's not very high up.
Is it big? How wide?
I just popped out to have a look at progress. It's about, a metre and a half square. So not insignificant. Because we thought...
Is it going to be a house?
I think it's going to be more of a platform.
Yeah. we had a tree platform in our tree in the garden back when in Radcliffe. But it was quite a small platform, and I always sort of it would have been nice if it was a house, but also there's too many kids going up and down there.
Well, we thought because it's it's in a lemon tree, so they're evergreen and they're quite bushy, so it'll be a nice shaded. Nick sort of woven it into the tree quite well, so anyway, we thought she could play there. She's into climbing at the moment, and anyway, there you go. So, How was your week? How are you, Michael?
I've had a half hours week this week because in the spirit of trying to kind of keep my keep the burnout at bay. I thought let's just do a half time week. Just cut. So I just changed my app that says how long I've got to work on each thing to just divide it by 2.
Right.
And so I've been sort of doing the mornings and then coming home, and basically we've been watching. We got Disney Plus trial, and I have to make a decision in the next few hours if I want to keep it going. But we've just been watching, just rewatching all the Marvel films in order. So some of them are nice for sleeping through, and some of them are, much more fun. But I definitely slept through a lot of the Thor films and a lot of Ant-Man. But the rest of them, we've been doing that, watching the little things. But I'm just is it really worth another subscription? Still slightly on the fence. And I think I'm getting a bit tired of. I'm having this weird paradox of suddenly. The pandemic has both made me feel like I have more financial freedom whilst taking away my freedom to actually do anything. I am starting to get a bit of the cabin fever, I think.
Yeah.
Sort of I'm sort of missing when the supermarket was a fun, reliable place to go. At least there's always the supermarket. If you go out for a walk and you don't really know what to do, don't go to a gallery, at least there's always the supermarket. And that's just, it sort of feels like it's been taken away. It's just I was just getting a bit bored of it. So, that's all.
But on the subject of cabin fever, been talking to a couple of other people who've got small children, who, because ours doesn't really want to leave the premises. And this is a child who normally would I haven't been anywhere today. Where are we going? We've got to go somewhere. And now she's should we go for a walk? No. Shall we go on a bike ride? No. Shall we go? She just doesn't want to leave the premises. So I'm trying to work out how much of a concern it should be. Is it okay just to let it rumble along whilst it's COVID? I keep calling it Corvid and it's COVID. While it's Corona land, it's because Corona has a R and COVID doesn't, and it's messing with my head. Anyway, so that's my little cabin fever related concern.
But I have a right not to have cabin fever, a human right.
Well, I bumped into the headmistress of the nursery the other morning, and so she sent me the email address of the nursery's child psychologist. So I shall email her and ask for her advices on child refusing to leave the premises.
All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. That's Article 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It starts out gendered, but let's ignore that.
Let's put that to one side.
Everybody is a person. Everybody is entitled, without distinction, as race, colour, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth or other status. It's about discrimination, human rights, a lot of it. Oh. So camping outside a building and having a big party to say that your human rights are being impeded on when you're just being asked to do the same as everyone else, it's not about human rights, it's about you being selfish.
It is really. You are, of course, referring to the American people what are protesting at the moment to say we don't want to be in lockdown because we have the right to not be in lockdown. And I think this is where things get confusing. I don't know if I've ever told you that the story of a teacher in a school my mum taught at. It was a language teacher. It's a number of years ago now. A child was using a mobile phone in the lesson, and the teacher was a teacher of the French language. So she confiscated the phone and then changed the language of the phone into French before returning it. And I thought that was funny and clever and the right sort of thing for a French teacher to do, as a kind of like, ha-ha, you know, a silly way of saying don't use your phone in my class. And the parents rocked up to school and this is an infringement of my child's human right to use that. And it's like this human rights thing gets bandied about loosely and freely when it's done, and in a way that somehow it's been sort of taken by one set of people, and by one set of people I mean the people on the right, as some sort of like softy lefty bullshit that is just actually there to attack them and stop them being
free
arseholes.
To be. Yeah. Oh, but I like being racist. Stop calling us racist. Well, stop being racist. It's about protecting people with less power. It's not about safeguarding your comfort. I mean, yes, there is, you know, I'm just looking through the charter and it's like people have a right to security, liberty, life, sure. Like, who could argue with that? That's not incompatible with being told you have to stay at home.
No.
To protect everyone.
No, but the sort of the right to security, it's like, I mean, I was walking home one time from a anti-Brexit march and I didn't have any paraphernalia on, but some people near me had EU flags on, and this guy walked past and went, traitors! And it's
we got that as well.
And it was like a very sort of, that is very aggressive. That is very aggressive language and very aggressive posturing. And it's like, actually, you're now that's that right. You're infringing my right to security. I have a right to go and protest in the context of something. I'm not stopping you. I'm not stopping you protesting as well. But my protest doesn't involve any aggression. So don't be aggressive. I think that's where some of the confusion comes in. Like if I go about, if I'm protesting to remain in we'll take the EU because I think it's perhaps a little bit more fun than Corona. But you know, if I'm going and marching through the streets of London shouting, you know, let's remain in the EU, I'm not really having a go at you. I'm not calling you an idiot. I'm not calling you a traitor. I'm not attacking you as a person. I'm not stopping you protesting.
They probably know that you're thinking it though.
Maybe that's it. Maybe that is it. But But I think in the context of this, it always boils down to you do have a right to all your opinions and you do have a right to do whatever you want to do, as long as it doesn't affect me. It's like people who are, like if people who are actively, aggressively homophobic or go around gay bashing. It's like, if somebody is gay, it doesn't affect me personally in any way, shape or form.
I just sort of searched the document for free speech. And it's like, it's not, I mean, it's like, it's sort of in the intro, some stuff about speech, but what a lot of the sort of aggression of the right gets defended on the basis of free speech. But this isn't about being able to say anything you want. It's about protecting the people that are discriminated against. And the way that a lot of people are discriminated against is with speech. And the best way I've seen this set is tolerance is not an exchange. I tolerate you being I tolerate you being a ethnic minority, therefore you have to tolerate me being racist at you. It's a contract that says we all tolerate each other, and if you break the contract by being intolerant, you lose all your rights. You don't get to do whatever you want, because it's an agreement between us. It's not an exchange of I can do something, so therefore you can do something.
Yeah, I think there's this insidious thing in society, and that sticks and stones may break my bones thing. Yeah. It's like we all got told that as kids. Oh, so-and-so said this to me, well, sticks and stones may break your bones, but whereas actually that's not true at all. It's absolute nonsense. Like the sticks and stones and the words can be really harmful and detrimental and as discriminatory as each other. And I think that's the free speech argument is a tricky one. How do you delineate, where do you delineate between what's free speech and what's hate speech? Like, is there a measure? Is there a specific?
It's I always come back to it has to be seen in the context of a power dynamic. You can't discriminate from a position of weakness. You can only discriminate from a position of power. But we watched this show Evil recently, which had a really interesting episode where this Rwandan woman kidnaps this radio DJ who was kind of doing funny stuff about killing, and there was the Rwandan genocide that I didn't really know much about, and I looked it up and it's like, Jesus Christ, making jokes about killing Tutsis. And sort of making jokes about it on the radio and fart sound effects and all this kind of stuff. And she was like, you were part of a system that ended up with my, people being massacred and families, and you were responsible for that with your speech. But then he sort of says, well, I'm a comedian. I was punching up. I thought I was punching up because they seem to have... They had all the power, they had all the money, and I think probably you can see that even probably like in the Nazis and stuff. Like it gets complicated when people feel like they're punching up, and that turns into a genocide. That's scary, because that kind of I don't even know how you defend against that, how you stop that from happening. And these people that are protesting the lockdown, I guess they feel like they're punching up, getting their guns out and marching and going, no, we're going to take back control from you. And they're so stupid that they don't realise that all they're doing is hurting themselves and all of the other people around them. They're not doing anything to the people in charge. And actually, not even to get into how stupid the idea of we want to end lockdown because we're whatever. It's our human right not to be. No, it's about all of us. And you're acting like it's about someone in power imposing their will on you. It's not. It's about doing what's right for everyone to get through this.
I think it's this thing. It's what's right for everyone. That is the key bit of this coronavirus that is totally different to previous. I mean, it's on such a scale that you can't reduce it. You can't, there's lots of contagious diseases and you could apply the same rule to anti-vaxxers and what have you. But it's like this is now, it is at such a scale that every every person who infects another person is not protecting all of us. You know, do you know what I mean? Every action you take that isn't in the interest of all of us is against all of us. There's no, like, I mean, I saw this video on Facebook. Angela Merkel did a little speech about the difference between, you know, an infection rate of 1 to 1 or 1 to 1.1 or 1 to 1.2. And she just sort of describes the sort of how quickly their health service won't cope.
Yeah,
they can cope with 1 to 1 at the moment. That's it. But then it's become so you've got this coronavirus that is everyone. So any act you make that's not for everyone is against everyone. But now if you then take it to something that's less likely to affect all of us. So somebody being homophobic doesn't particularly affect me personally because I'm pretty heterosexual as far as I know, as far as current data suggests. They but then. So then how do I act in the interest of all of, you know, like what makes me behave in the interest of everybody, even though I'm not as susceptible to homophobic behaviour as I am to the coronavirus. And I think that's if we can think of everything as the coronavirus, it'd be much better.
Well, that's all the sort of human rights thing is. It's like saying everyone's universally, all human beings deserve the same rights.
Yeah.
Not like one thing for one person, one thing for another person. We're certainly not getting that because of the various power dynamics in existence. The biggest discriminating factor being where you were born is kind of the thing that has the most impact on how likely you are to be, you know, enjoy a full raft of human rights.
Yeah.
But I've got this theory, though,
go on,
about coronavirus.
Oh, yeah.
That the crappier someone's mask is, the better they are as a person, because if they've got a crappy mask on, that means they're protecting other people. Whereas if they've got a big, like, full face covering gas mask, that means they're just trying to protect themselves.
Is that your theory?
That's my theory. Obviously, maybe some of them are nurses and stuff. I don't know, but I'm just saying, my crappy corona mask, you should see that as me being a good person.
I was reading this. I made myself a mask and I've now changed my profile picture on everything for me wearing the mask because I was reading some. There's this woman I follow on Twitter who's a Oxford Don doctor person, and she does these nice summaries of. She said it's not a study, but on the balance of discussion amongst us experts looking at the data we have to date. Masks, yes, rather than masks, no. So I was like, all right, if you say so, you're clever. And then somebody else. This is where now somebody in my Facebook world, she's very snarky about everything. I'm very cynical. She doesn't like Greta. She doesn't like, she's just snarky snarks. And I think she's very unhappy. Yeah. Really. And I just don't have she's a long way away from me and it's very hard to go, I don't think you're very happy. Do you want to talk to me about it? And I think that, and she did something about it's to do with people's, like, oh, now I can see who's got hygiene problems because they're wearing masks. What? It's just like, if you want to be a person who gets angry and attacks everything, you're going to get angry and attack everything, regardless of whether there's a pandemic or not.
To come back to the steps of the government building is it Minnesota? Like, I need to be able to say a little bit more about that video. But to come back to that, I did look at them and go, like, you people are so angry and so unhappy.
Unhappy.
So desperate for something to blame. And I wish you could see that You're pointing the finger in the wrong place. And why can't we get through to you and make you realise that it's capitalism? It's the thing you love. It's the thing that is killing you because you think that you're going to win the lottery and you're not.
No. But if you take it away from me, then I definitely won't win it, Michael. I also think in this context of this type of, demanding of rights, it's like the right to shoot somebody on your property, for example.
It's like, mess.
It's like, what? Just because I walked on your land?
Because property is more important than people. Property is more important than a human life. It's not even someone taking your property, just someone standing on your property is more important than a human life. What is wrong with your brain?
I was listening to one of these podcasts I listened to this week was a interview with James Howard Kunstler. The Long Emergency is a book he wrote, and he was speaking about, they were having a Team Humanish chat that I was listening. It was all, nicely bimbling along, talking about having what we need rather than what we want and wasting, all the kind of thing. I was like running and nodding quite happily. Then Rushkoff goes, the question that most of my friends are emailing me at the moment and asking me is, should I get a gun? Because obviously they're in America and it's a very gun-centric world. Yeah. And thankfully, Douglas Rushkoff responded in a way that we would expect him to respond, which was basically laughing about it and talking about having like those toys that you used to have when dangerous toys were a bit more permitted, where you had those like wrist rocket things that fired ball bearings and things. So he's just making a laugh about a joke about it. And then this guy who had seemed really like gentle and talking about the fact that no, the airline companies should be allowed to fail. They must not be bailed out. Then let's see what value they actually have to society, and why do we need the cruise ship industry? It was all like saying all these things. I was like, yeah, right on, man. And then he goes, I've got a license to carry a concealed weapon and I have a number of guns. And yes, I think people we're going to need guns. And I was like, you're only going to need guns if everybody thinks you're going to need guns. I don't know. It really is. Why does this sort of pandemic lockdown, these kind of situations, immediately get people to fast forward to this? I'm going to need to fight for tins of food. And I'm going to need to shoot people that are coming onto my property. I think, that's the sort of an element of this human rights malarkey that gets, I have a right to carry a weapon that really doesn't.
I have a right to protect myself. Well, yeah, but it's that dynamic of, I don't know. If there weren't people with guns to protect yourself from, you wouldn't need a gun. Do you see the logic there? I think we need more guns to keep. You've seen that Richard Ayoade thing.
Yeah.
I think the only solution to guns is to have more guns.
Right. Well, I saw this article, put it on my Facebook, because this was the first March since 2002 that America hadn't had a school shooting.
God.
The first month, this March was the first month since 2002 that America hasn't had a school shooting.
Since 2002, the first...
Since 2002.
In 18 years, they've had a school shooting.
Every single month.
Which is nothing to do with guns, according to NRA types.
It's like...
You should be ashamed. They should be ashamed of themselves.
They should.
They should be absolutely ashamed of themselves.
And I don't understand how that part of the American narrative persists. I really, really don't. I commented on it. Posted it, and I literally just wrote "f***ing hell" as my comment, because it's like, I don't know how, because I think that's what I actually said when I saw the article. And then somebody I know who is American living in London, and he said, I grew up with it, and I still like, you know, he grew up with the normality of guns and he still doesn't understand. Oh, because he commented that I'm sure they're making up for it by having lots of home shootings. And it's like, and they probably are. Because, like, put people in a really difficult situation and chuck a weapon in there and someone's going to get shot. There's no, like... You know, the worst that can happen in my house is that somebody might get some sourdough starter slung at them. It's got, you know, it's like a...
It's exactly the same as the nuclear proliferation stuff. It's like if the best thing to do is for no one to have a nuclear weapon. Let's form an agreement between all of us that the best solution is no one to have a gun and go from there. But America seems to have got confused about that and they don't want that.
No, they don't want that at all.
Oh, but I like hunting. Well, you should be a vegetarian, so.
Oh, God.
Why should you get to hunt?
Why should you? Yeah, right, you need to be. But it's kind of it's this I like. So one of the quotes that this Edward Kunstler guy had said that that made me think, and I was like, it was this fun thing that I used in the beginning of the podcast where he talked about the fact that, Rushkoff was saying, but, you know, the 60s, it was also decadent and we just, you know, like, take all the drugs, drink all the drink, you know. And he was like, but decadence is just fun. And at some point, you have to understand that you can't do things just because they're fun. You have to do them because they're the right thing to do. Or, you know, you can't do some fun things because that fun thing is the wrong thing to do. And that's this guy was using sort of like as children do things just because they're fun, but as you grow up you have to learn that, you know, you have to have responsibility, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, I think that's another thing, is just because you want to do something doesn't make it your right. It does not make it your human right. I'm sorry. There are many, many things that you can do just because you want to do them, as long as they don't in any way affect other people's human rights. And I think that's the, you know, like if you take in many ways, I've got a very libertarian view to response to drug taking. Sure, you know, whatever you want to do, I don't care. But that if you start thinking about it, that whole journey of the drugs is infringing lots of people's human rights and putting lots of people in danger. And it's like, you know, actually you just doing that little end result isn't as right on and cool as you think it is. And it's those, you know, so there are actually very few things that you can do that are fun. It's like, you know, you can go and, I don't know, like the I want to hunt because I like it, or I want to do these things. It's like, have a think about it.
Is there anything else you like doing?
Think about something else. It's like,
it's not the only thing you like doing.
How about making some jam?
Why don't you get rid of the old real guns and just get a really nice high-end modern gaming console and a gamer's chair and a pretend gun and do it in the game, and then nobody has to suffer. Just like, you know, how we phased out actual Colosseum violence and changed it for cinema, where they make fake. But it's not quite as good. You know, it's not quite as real. It's not quite as good as actually seeing someone being dismembered. But I think
it'll do.
At the end of the day, it's probably a better solution.
That element as well, this sort of progress element that comes into it. It's like, we definitely did used to do that. Yep, you're right, and we enjoyed that, but we don't do it anymore because we've learned something. We've learned that's not good.
We realised that some of those people involved were humans, and we realised that actually maybe animals are. There's a reason to not, you know.
Why don't we do slavery anymore? Because we know that all humans are humans.
Slavery was handy for so many things, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, God, I used to have a slave for that." but they sucked it up in the end eventually. But those people were fighting. Yeah, it's like people need to grow up.
Yes. Fun is fine as long as it doesn't infringe anyone else's human rights. I think then there's this thing, it's like you and I, we've just talked through humans and you've gone to animals, but then you've got the people who bring up the fetus as a human right.
Yeah.
The fetus's human rights. And I think that's another area where we need to be very clear.
The mother is also a human in that equation.
Yes. It's like, and yeah, we all know it's very hard and people have to make difficult decisions and often very unpleasant decisions for them, for everyone else, but there are the only human in that context who has a right to make any sort of decision is the human carrying the fetus. It's like, you know, do you want to give your life for this person? That's not, well, that's another thing. It's the person. They was bringing this fact that it's a human, and it's so not a human for ages.
It takes a lot to get a human into any sort of shape. Like, this is like, even with the body starting like, there's religious thinking to it. There's this magical thinking to it. This idea that there's at the moment of conception, a soul comes into existence in the ether, and that is eternal. It's like, no, it has to grow slowly over time. You had to grow. You're not magic. You're just kind of like, you've slowly grown into a sort of thing that can interact with other things and survive and stay alive. You're not magic, and you did not begin at conception. You slowly developed over a very long time. And that's the conversation you're really having there.
Yeah, I mean,
get over yourself.
I know we've covered this on the podcast, but there's that argument they use because you can very early on detect literally a flutter of cells that is the beginning of one day will be a heart. And they've used some of these, they've used that sound in court as the voice of the unborn fetus defending itself.
Yeah.
And it's like, my goodness.
Have you not noticed that babies can't talk yet? You cretin.
No. I'm not, I think it's like it's so not logical in so many ways. You know, last episode I was talking about that paediatrician talked about 0.03% of children in the UK, that's 800 kids potentially could die from coronavirus. And on podcast, I don't think I used a good enough visualization because I was talking about it afterwards. And it's like this, if it's 800 children in a building, like you wouldn't imagine doing anything to harm them. And if it's that philosophical story that I bring up all the time, that if you see a child drowning, what do you do? But if you see somebody walking on your property, you would shoot them. Or if you see, like, you know, or if you'd let certain people die, but not, like, I don't understand how you can claim to have any interest or desire to protect human rights unless it's all the humans.
Yeah, it's fundamentally it comes back to imagination to some extent. If you can't see directly how your actions are having consequences, maybe not immediately, but in a few days, your protest has meant more people died. But because you're sort of insulated from having to deal with that by the fact that it's sort of microscopic and invisible and you're not going to see it directly yourself, I think it's the people with the least imagination and the people with the worst spelling that are doing this. I'm sorry, but like, you know, they should have stayed in school.
Well, this goes back to that last episode of where everyone needs health, basic income and education.
Yes,
then
please.
A lot of things will get a lot better.
There should not be anything standing in the way of someone getting better education. There should never be a barrier there.
No.
So no one benefits from people not getting educated. thanks for listening. We've already said what to do if you like the podcast. So come and join my mailing list at goodtohear.co.uk. What can people do?
People can come and talk to me at Ivanka on Twitter or email us hello@grandpodcast.com and tell us what we've got wrong this week. Tell us what we don't know, or tell us how much you enjoy listening to us.
Yeah, well, tell us what might be good. You can make subject suggestions. I think we're pretty ready for them at this point. We're sort of like coming up with them just before the episode at the moment, so that's not ideal. No. So if you dropped an email, you could spark a seed in both of our brains and have a genuine direct effect on this piece of media. So with that said, I think we can just say bye. Yes. See you next week. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye.